An old saying goes that happiness begins at home. So if the projections are right, and that by 2050, 70% of the world's population will live in cities, we need to think seriously about how we plan the neighborhoods of tomorrow. The good news is that that's not news. Urban planners, mayors, local community groups, and more already care about the future of our cities. And if buzzwords are any indication, we also already have a pretty good idea about where we're headed. The future will be walkable, bikeable, and sustainable. We'll live near jobs, shops, and schools where we can live, work, and play. And we all want to reduce congestion, enhance safety, promote jobs, and increase quality of life. But here's the rub. People don't just walk, or bike, or feel fulfilled because they live in a LEED-certified building. In fact, quality of life, and even more broadly, our happiness, is difficult to define and even harder to plan for. Perhaps that's why we often feel like something is missing from our towns and cities. We are made for community, and yet we often can't find it. We yearn to feel valued, understood, and connected, and yet we often feel the exact opposite. That feeling of connection is essential. Study after study has shown an undeniable link between human well-being and the feeling that you're a part of something. Harvard Medical School research has also demonstrated that our relationships and sense of connection are the greatest predictors of mental and physical health. In other words, our quality of life improves most when we feel engaged and empowered. Social connectivity and an ability to play a role in the world around us are essential to feeling happy. So, if you're an urban planner concerned about quality of life, that connection between well-being and engagement should emphasize the importance of public participation in the planning process. If we want to make better communities, we need communities to tell us what's working and what's not. There's just one problem. Planning's boring. Let's be real. Most of us aren't going to attend a local zoning commission meeting. We probably didn't even know that the meeting was taking place. And so only a handful of us showed up, voicing our very invested opinions, for better or worse. To their credit, planners generally try to seek public input. Almost every professional planning association meeting has a session on stakeholder engagement, and newer public participation strategies like visioning happy hours and urban planning charrettes are gaining in popularity. But the language of these efforts, even within the very best planning projects, tells us that something's off. For example, the American Planning Association recently named the Plano Tomorrow Plan in Plano, Texas, as the year's best comprehensive plan. And by a lot of counts, Plano did some cool things, like making the plan video-based rather than a giant book. But let's take a look at their public outreach strategy. Plano's success metrics, like all too many plans, focus on what its planners did, not actual participation. So they sent announcements in people's utility bills, paid for robocalls, attended the Neighborhood Leadership Council's quarterly breakfast, and they hosted meetings in a box. That's great, but I don't know if that means that Plano collected a diversity of ideas and opinions. Let's be real, not everyone fills out a survey at a balloon festival. I'm not saying this to pick on Plano, but to illustrate 2 points. First, that getting people to participate in planning is really hard. Second, to demonstrate that even one of the best plans in America suffers from an urban planning skills gap. If public participation is essential to quality of life, you'd think that planners would receive heaps of community outreach training. Likewise, they'd have a real understanding of how to put plans into action to make communities better. Neither is true. Simply put, planners don't receive adequate training in public participation strategies, the political process, or Communications 101. In fact, a quick review of the nation's best urban planning graduate programs reveals an almost shocking lack of courses devoted to public participation. Students spend plenty of time learning about planning theory, planning history, advanced data methodologies, and technical skills like geographic information systems mapping. But almost no courses are devoted to communicating with diverse audiences or putting plans into action. I'd hazard to guess that most people who become urban planners do so because they want to make a difference. But for that to become a reality, we need to overhaul the planning process to truly emphasize public participation. Listening, conversing, observing, communicating, and relationship building should be an urban planner's chief skill set. So why aren't we teaching them how to do those things? Great models for public participation, like that of Envision Utah, already exist. Envision Utah, perhaps more than any other planning project, has used marketing savvy and values-based messaging to inspire participation. Just look at this compared to Plano. I'm sold, aren't you? And that's why 50,000 Utahns participated in the Your Utah, Your Future plan for 2050. The lesson of Envision Utah is all about building buy-in. Planners who want to make a difference would do well to think more like grassroots political organizers, building relationships with local businesses, venerated residents, religious organizations, brokers trust, and fosters collective change-making. Effective, clear, resonant messaging is the hallmark of good advertising, and it should be for planning efforts too. And say what you will about polling organizations after the most recent US election, but companies like Gallup and Survey USA have effectively measured public sentiment for years. There's no silver bullet for public participation, no singular approach to building better communities. But at bare minimum, it's time to shift our focus from zoning codes and technical skills to just figuring out what people want. Happiness and health aren't engineering problems. They're people problems. When planners put people first, the results speak for themselves. One of the best examples I have for this actually comes from a community that had its independence and self-governance taken away. If you're the Oglala Lakota tribe on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota, you know a thing or two about the perils of underrepresentation. Today, Pine Ridge is one of the poorest areas in America, as the native tribe struggles to deal with economic hardship, substance abuse, under-resourced schools, and lack of transportation connectivity. And in 1890, it was the home of the Wounded Knee Massacre, a brief, one-sided encounter with US troops that left at least 150 dead. So it's safe to say that the Oglala haven't always been the beneficiary of past planning efforts, which is why the work of the Thunder Valley Community Development Corps should inspire us all the more. Instead of resorting to formulaic processes, Thunder Valley is tapping into language and memory to engage the community. This is just one of the ways that they've been able to do that. We Oglalas do the best we can to take care of our own people. This little piece of land we have is our home. We don't want to be anywhere else. This is all we have left. We know it is up to us Oglalas to make it happen. This might only work on Pine Ridge. And that's the point. It's authentic and personal. It's Oglala. Thunder Valley's ability to tap in to history and heritage is what gives their planners the ability to do what they do. There's a constant thread of self-sufficiency. And that value is why Thunder Valley supports a youth development initiative, construction labor training, and food sovereignty program. Their crowning achievement is the development of a new regenerative community, a kind of whole new neighborhood that caters to the need of reservation residents. As one Pine Ridge resident put it after attending a Thunder Valley meeting, that was the best meeting I've ever been to in my whole life. Nobody had ever asked me what I want from my community or my life. And that's the key. When planners are able to pin down what's in our heart, planning regains the power to improve the places we call home. It's just not likely to happen at a zoning meeting. Quality of life depends on how much we engage in it. I invite you to join me in doing just that.